Right, welcome back. So the first art chat this morning, it's called Beneath the Skin. It's an exhibition created by Mike Fisher, which really reflects on the horrors of the Holocaust, but through site-specific works that include ceramic sculpture, wall hangings. He seeks to honor the memory of those who perished and also just convey the incomprehensible suffering, the trauma that had been experienced by the survivors as well. So the multidisciplinary artist, Mike Fisher, joins us here in studio this morning, perhaps to reflect and share a little bit more. Good morning, Mike. Thank you for your time at this hour.
Yeah, well, interesting to get up so early.
For such an important topic as well, because we heal as we reflect and also learn from the lessons of the past as well. The approach that you took, you being a multidisciplinary artist, numbers often mask the emotional elements of what actually transpired. So art helps us to really connect to that. Tell us a little bit more about that journey for you.
I just love the way you presented that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So which part do you want me to tell you about? Because it's such a big subject.
Well, the exhibition at large.
Okay.
Yeah, to talk to us about the lens through which you viewed it, perhaps also how everything came.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So, as you know, I'm a multidisciplinary artist,
yes.
And if I can just say a little bit about that, because there was a point where I was actually just a painter and a photographer. But over the years, I've accumulated so much experience in a whole range of different disciplines. So it helps very much within the context of this particular show that I'm doing in Johannesburg. And so for me, what I wanted to do was I wanted to move away from pretty pictures. And I wanted to do something meaningful, which had purpose. And being a psychotherapist as well, I could tolerate the depth of despair, sadness, trauma, because taking on a project like this was just profoundly, deeply traumatic for me. And I think even within the context of that, I've had a lot of healing as well, based on that. But in terms of the actual work, those who will go and see the show,
yes.
Hopefully what they'll realize that there's so many different aspects to the Holocaust. And so what I was able to do, based on the stories that I read, the interviews that I listened to, and an amazing amount of videos, there were themes that I enjoyed, not just from an emotional perspective, but from a visual perspective. So for example, there's this death march that took place in Auschwitz, between Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II. And if your viewers are actually seeing some of those images, what they will probably see that we have thousands of people that walked between Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II. Auschwitz I was just essentially a camp where they were murdering people, of course, but Auschwitz II, the intention was to murder as many people as they possibly could. And so with the context of the death march, there's something very powerful and very, very emotive about that body of work. Sure. The other aspect of this is, one of the things about being Jewish is birth is such an important and significant symbol, and death is in the same way. And so there's a series of work that's based on coffins. And if I go into a little bit of detail about these mass burials where, they were shooting people and killing people by the hundreds of thousands, the millions, as you probably know. And on the basis of that, you can imagine these skeletons like rotting away in these mass burials. And there's something about skeletons and how they kind of fragmented over years, if not months. What I was able to do is to kind of recreate symbolically within the context of these coffins, very, very powerful and meaningful images and associations with the actual burial, these mass burials, mass deaths.
Yeah.
Then there's another aspect of as well where I call it ascension, where within the context of dying, it wasn't like they were being buried in a very beautiful and traditional way and meaningful way. It was just being slaughtered. And so there's something about their souls going up to heaven. And there's images that, one very beautiful sculpture that I made and then photographed, which reflects that. But I suppose what I'm most shocked by in terms of actually doing these artist walkabouts is how little people know about these stories. They see the images, they see the videos, they hear the conversations, but the stories is really something that I've become very interested in. And so on the basis of that, what I'm hoping, of course, is that people will be touched by it.
Well, it started on the 18th of January, if I'm not mistaken. Holocaust Day is on the 27th.
Yes.
So, how has it been received? Just following all your research and how people are obviously just interacting with all of this.
Well, it's My first show was in Cape Town a year and a half ago. And what was really interesting about that show is that, and this show as well in Johannesburg, is like people, when I tell the story, besides the images, you know, it's like they didn't know about these stories. And I'm assuming on some level that people know these stories. And obviously they don't know these stories. So there is something about the actual very powerful images that reflect and represent the stories. And when you bring the stories into the context of the actual work itself, it has a profound amount of meaning. But of course, what I was saying earlier on, you know, I want to make work that is meaningful. So from my perspective, there's something to be said about, you know, if you go to a very beautiful exhibition, wherever it might be, what a beautiful painting, what a beautiful photograph, what a beautiful sculpture. When you're seeing this body of work, there's nothing beautiful about it at all. You know, it touches you on such a deep level. And if you look at it from the perspective of trauma, every single one of us experienced trauma, so we know what that feels like. But there's something about this work that evokes those feelings and, of course, the meanings associated to that. So I can imagine many people would have a huge amount of resistance to going to a show like that. In fact, I have friends that just simply don't even want to acknowledge it. And as you probably know, in the Jewish context, we already have issues internationally, but there's something about never forget. And there's a title that I read on social media, Never Forget is Now.
Yeah.
So which, you know, in itself is a very profound statement.
Well, lest we never forget. I mean, if we draw parallels between what's happening then and now, how we overcome indifference, how we overcome hatred as well. There are profound parallels that can be drawn as well. So talk to us a little bit more about the title then, Beneath the Skin itself for you.
Well, the reason, thank you for asking that question. I think there's something really powerful, because if you look at it from a superficial perspective, you're not kind of really getting it. So what I'm trying to do within the context of this body of work is to get beneath your skin in order to touch you in a way that is really going to make you reflect on a very, very deep level. So that's why I've given it that title. But there is something to be said so much more about the title, because if you think about the history of the Holocaust, and if you think about the history of genocide historically, I mean, there's a lot to be said about the traumas that people have had to deal with. And of course, that's not on the surface. It's not superficial. It is between the skin, beneath the skin.
It also makes us think about what remembrance actually means, right? And moral responsibility as well. What was evoked through that for you this time around?
Well, look, I love these questions. So there's something, you know, there's something to be said about unprocessed trauma. And there is a very interesting book, and I hope your viewers will remember this. It's called It Didn't Start With You. So even as my background within the context of being a psychotherapist, I'm very aware that when I'm working with somebody, it didn't just start with them. So there is science behind trauma. We're carrying 4 generations of trauma. And if you didn't do your work, or your great-great-grandparents didn't do their work, guess what? You're doing the work. So I've been doing a lot of that work over the last 4 years. I can now talk about the subject without bursting into tears, whereas historically, it was impossible for me to talk about this material.
I have to wrap up. Just very quickly, if we look at a story that stood out for you, because you were saying you're very shocked at how, you know, people knew sort of the general idea of what happened, but a personal story that was evoked through you, this experience, how it also managed to heal your own generational trauma?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. So I love the question, and I love the fact that you're asking these questions, because they are so meaningful and it's not superficial. Okay, so the one, I did the set of these 2 trees, and I think it is reflected somewhere on your screen. And there's something about the Kabbalah, yeah, exactly, the 2 trees. In fact, the 2 trees that are right there, and this is this butterfly tree. But there's something to be said about the Kabbalah and its Jewish mysticism. And I'm very cynical when it comes to religion or spirituality or even mysticism, but I know there's something there, so it's fascinating. But what kind of blew me away was I think it was in Auschwitz, where a woman had written, scraped into the wall, which basically said the only person who is answerable is God. And I find that so fascinating, because if you think about how religious us Jews have been for thousands of years and are still very, very religious, there's something really powerful within the context of that. But within the relationship of the trees, the title of the trees is not the tree of life within the context of the Kabbalah, but the tree of lies. And so that's one of the most powerful associations for me in terms of that body of work.
Sure. Well, it's going to evoke a lot more conversations. I have to leave ours there for now. Thank you for your time at this hour and for sharing your work. This morning, Mike Fisher chatting to us, multidisciplinary artist, psychologist, a psychotherapist, just speaking about his curated exhibition. It's entitled Beneath the Skin, exploring really what remains when dignity, ritual, humanity are stripped away, of course, as we approach closer to the Holocaust Day.